Katipunan. Kuwentuhang MVP takes you to the vibrant and passionate organization community of the Ateneo de Manila. Tune in every Friday as we catch up with our student leaders and our organizations and find out how they're continually pushing forth with their advocacies. Kuwentuhang MVP, taking the MVP to you.
Follow at radyo-katipunan in our social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. Good morning, Ateneo! Start your day right with your morning wake-up call. Good morning, Ateneo! Catch the latest news and stories around the campus. Good morning, Ateneo! Your daily dose of radio-chikahan, tawanan, kantahan, and kwentuhan. Every morning from 9 to 10 a.m. Tuesdays to Fridays. Good morning, Ateneo! Your mornings will never be the same again. Mga Katipuneros, it's time to level up! Your talk variety program showcasing the best in media and other fields as we feature the most loved personalities and the best practices of what we truly refer to as Magis. Together with multi-awarded multimedia guru Mr. Noel Ferrer, let's all level up every Fridays from 3 to 6 p.m. here on Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM. Radyo Katipunan. News, insights, inspiration. Radyo Katipunan. Down from the hill and down to the world. Radyo Katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle. Tara na't simulan ng inyong umaga sa mga magagandang refleksyon tungkol sa ating buhay at pananampalataya. Kasama sina Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, Father J. Boy Gonzales at Father Nono Alfonso ng Kapisanan ni Jesus, Father Cali Llamado ng Manila Cathedral at Binibining Risa Singson Kaupeng ng Light of Jesus Community dito sa Kapit Pandasal sa Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM.
Ano ang beauty secret mo? Ako si Risa Singson Kaupeng, book author at editor. Magkapit pandasal na muna tayo. Alam niyo, ang aking mommy, sumalangit nawa siya, ay sobrang metikuloso pagdating sa kanyang balat. Biruin ninyo, mga 1970s pa ito at hindi pa uso noon ang mga Korean beauty products at iba't ibang klaseng skincare regimen. Pero ang dami na niyang mga bote-bote at kung ano-anong pinapahid niya sa mukha niya. Naalala ko na nung maliit pa ako, manghang-mangha akong nanonood sa kanya tuwing gabi sa paggawa niya ng kanyang beauty ritual sa banyo pagkatapos niya maligo. Mahina ang 1 oras para sa lahat na ginagawa niya sa kanyang balat. Kaya naman ang ganda at ang kinis ng kutis niya. Ngunit nung lalo pa siyang naging malapit sa Panginoon sa pamamagitan ng charismatic renewal, nawala yung gabi-gabi niyang beauty regimen at napalitan ng bagong routine na tiyak mas nagpaganda lalo sa kanya, ang pagbabasa ng Biblia araw-araw. Kaya sige, ituloy mo lang ang beauty regimen mo. Sabi nga nila, sa dami ng siyensya na available sa mundo, kung pangit ka pa ngayon, talagang problema mo na yan. Pero wag nating kalimutan na ang retinol at collagen at kung ano-ano pa ay hanggang balat lang. Ngunit ang pagdarasal at ang pagsunod kay Jesus ay kagandahan sa loob at labas na pangmatagalan. Tayo magdasal. Jesus, nakatingin kami sa inyo at umaasa. Naway magningning ang liwanag niyo sa amin. Amen.
Radyo, 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 katipunan, radyo, katipunan, radyo, katipunan, radyo, 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 katipunan, radyo, katipunan. Voice of the Eagle kami, di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay Atenista, sa loob sa labas ng eskwela.
Palalimin ang kamalayan sa mga isyong napapanahon. Makisangkot at makiisa kasama ang Simbahang Lingkod ng Bayan, ang social-political apostolate ng Kapisanan ni Jesus. Ito ang Kuwentuhang Bayan mula alas 11 ng umaga tuwing Biyernes dito lang sa Radyo-Katipunan 87.9 FM. Dahil naniniwala kami na posible ang isang mas mabuting lipunan at maaari itong simulan sa isang kwentuhan.
Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat, or should I say magandang tanghali, no? Malapit ng magtanghali. Welcome na naman to another episode of our program, Kuwentuhang Bayan, dito sa Radyo Katipunan.
Ayan, magandang umaga din po sa mga katipunero at katipunera. But of course, may mga special guests din tayo from the Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines. So we're streaming this live as well on our Facebook page, no? So magandang umaga sa inyo na sumusubaybay sa ating ngayong umaga, and of course linggo-linggo sa programa na to.
Ako po si Xavier ng SLB at kasama ko po ngayon si...
Ako naman si Karlo Abadines galing sa Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines. Ayan.
Welcome po sa ating episode na simple lang naman po yung pamagat, Ecological Integrity. At part po ito ng ating series na Kuwentuhang Halalan sa Kuwentuhang Bayan. Alam mo, Karlo, pag naalala ko talaga yung usapin na related sa environment, madalas naalala kita eh. Kasi
Wow.
kung eto po kasi si Karlo, magkasama kami dati din sa SLB at magkaibigan na kami since college days. At mahilig talaga tong si Karlo sa pag-akyat-akyat sa bundok, 'di ba? So pag naalala ko yung nature, laging Karlo Abadines.
Wow, talagang gano'n, no? At kaya masaya din ako na parte ako sa pag-host ng programa na to kasi nga nag-i-enjoy talaga ako dati talaga sa mountaineering, no? And I had an attachment to the environment. And kahit ngayon, no, pagka-graduate na din at nagtatrabaho na din, it continues to be an important aspect. Ay, kahit nga sinasabi ko nga kay Save dati sa trabaho ko din noon, nag-iikot kami sa mga areas at pupunta kami sa mga disaster-struck areas. At alam po natin na crucial, no, ang environmental issues, no, dahil nga sa mga areas na to, sila yung most affected. And we realize it's the poor, no, who actually get affected. Baka nauna na tayo sa conversation natin. Introduction pa lang to.
Totoo, Karlo, no? At saka napapaisip din ako kasi lalo ngayong pandemic, parang mas hindi na natin napupuntahan talaga yung mga lugar na may ganitong concern, di ba? Lalo yung sa disaster, tas yung mga problema sa environment, hindi na natin ganong nabibisita, di ba? Kaya maganda ring pag-usapan, balikan, baka may mapulot tayong mga kwento na nangyari ngayong, lalo na ngayong pandemya, di ba? Lalo na sa usapin ng kalikasan. Or yung term natin dito kanina is ecological integrity eh. And kung titingnan natin yung term na to, malawak to and gusto nating himayin kung ano nga ba yun, kung kalikasan lang ba talaga yun or gaano ka-involved yung mga mismong tao, di ba? Pagdating sa ganung usapin. So sa mga hindi pa nakakaalam, yung SLB, Simbahang Lingkod ng Bayan, at yung Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines or CEAP ay gumawa po ng programang ito na tinatawag nating Kuwentuhang Halalan sa Kuwentuhang Bayan upang pag-usapan natin yung mga importanteng issue ng ating bansa at try nating tignan kung ano yung kahalagahan or connection sa darating na eleksyon kasi napakalaking usapin agad nung eleksyon na darating sa 2022. Tas isa pa, Karlo, 'di ba? Meron kayong tinatawag na campaign na Vote Love. Tama ba?
Ayan. Parte actually ito ng Vote Love campaign namin, no? Where we're encouraging, no? So ini-encourage po namin yung mga Catholic schools to participate, no? Really be active in the upcoming elections, no? And to really take a stance on certain things, no? Marami beses na ito napapag-usapan, no, sa CEAP na if we follow gospel values, at the end of the day, we cannot be neutral, no? And that's the reason why we actually talk about environmental issues, we talk about issues of gender and sexuality in the future, no? Poverty alleviation, justice and peace issues, no? And even the issues of the regions. Importante na palabasin natin to Kasi maganda talaga tingnan natin ano bang sinasabi ng ating pananampalataya din tungkol sa mga issue na ito, no? Should we make stances on certain things? Are there things na medyo black and white na, di ba? Na parang hindi, ito mali na talaga to. Kailangan maghanap tayo ng kandidato na hindi susuporta sa mga ganitong polisiya, no? So, importante ng pag-isipan 'yon at mas lalo sa darating na eleksyon, nawawala yung usapan ng mga issue, no? Masyadong nakakulong sa mga personality at doon nagre-revolve ang ating media. So sana dito sa Kwentuhang Halalan, mapag-usapan natin to at palalimin natin yung mga sa pagkakaintindi natin sa mga issue na ito. No?
Kaya ngayong umaga, Karlo, di ba, may kasama tayong dalawang guests na magbabahagi sa atin tungkol sa mga issue ng kalikasan. And unahan ko na bago natin sila ipakilala kasi nalaman ko na galing sila from Miriam College. And alam mo, dati before pandemic, talagang suking-suki yung SLB din sa pag-attend ng mga environmental talks sa Miriam College. Kung naalala ko sa Environmental Science Institute, laging dun ginaganap talaga eh. So, kumbaga malapit na to sa puso ng SLB.
Ayan. So kasama po natin ngayon si Dr. Donna Reyes, currently the faculty at the Department of Environment of Miriam College and previously our champion for ecological integrity in the GPG program. Ayan. Kaway naman po, Dr. Donna, and say hi.
Hi! Good morning po sa inyong lahat at salamat
Ayan.
sa pag-invite niyo sa amin dito sa inyong
Yes po. At maraming salamat din po sa pagsabi ng yes na pumunta po kayo dito, no? And of course, kasama din po ni Dr. Donna ay si Miss Noemi Tirona. Currently, a graduate student din po, o a graduate student of the Department of Environment in Miriam College as well. Ayan. Say hi naman po, Mas Noemi.
Good morning to everyone. I'm happy to be here. First time.
Ayan. So, sige, diretso na tayo.
Although, Karlo, nabanggit mo kasi yung GPG. Baka pwede tayong may quick briefer kung ano nga ba talaga yung ibig sabihin ng GPG?
Ayan. So yung GPG ay isang programa po ng CEAP. Each of the letters actually correspond to a certain theme, no? At ito yung pagtingin namin sa mga iba't ibang issue. So for J, it's justice and peace. E is ecological integrity. Papag-usapan natin ngayong araw. Another E, no, is engaged citizenship. P is for poverty alleviation, G is for gender equality, and Y is for youth empowerment. So ito pa yung mga 6 areas and themes for transformative education. At naniniwala kami, kung tayo ay mga Catholic schools, no, sa mga nakikinig po sa atin, for Catholic schools, and we are committed to transformative education, importante, no, na ini-educate natin yung mga ating mga estudyante tungkol din dito sa mga issues na ito, no, under the GPPs.
Ayan, thank you, Karlo. Doc Donna and Miss Noemi. Yung una ko sigurong tanong is, ano yung parang short definition nyo ng ecological integrity? Kumbaga, para dun sa ating mga audience. Tapos pagkatapos nun, gusto kong malaman kung paano kayo na-involve doon? Paano kayo napunta doon sa advocacy ng ecological integrity? Or sabihin natin simply as yung issue ng environment, di ba? Bakit po kayo nag-focus, kumbaga, yung inyong profession?
Yung ecological integrity, I believe, is focused on the balance of nature. Kasi tayo naniniwala na ang kalikasan ay likha talaga ng ating Panginoon. And He being the almighty and all-knowing God, no? Alam niya kung ano yung nagbabalanse para sa kalikasan mismo at para na rin sa tao who's really the main recipient of a good and balanced environment. So, yung iba, sinasabi nilang ecological integrity, yun ang pinaka-green na yun kung tatanungin niyo ako. Tapos meron din yung environmental perspective, meron din yung sustainable development perspective, na yun na yun yung mga usapin na yung henerasyon na ito. So, naniniwala tayo na ang mga entities, the creation of God, mga ibon, halaman, tao, have the right to live as individuals and also as ecosystems. Yun yung pag-aaral ng ekosistema ay yung tinatawag natin sa siyensya na ecology. So integrity is hindi siya nasisira to the point na nawawalan siya ng balanse at namamatay ang maraming mga tao, halimbawa, like for in the issue of mining, pag ang mining nagkukos na ng maraming natatabunan at maraming namamatay, ganun din sa floods, etc. Hindi na yun ecological integrity. Parusa na yun ng kalikasan dahil sa paglapastangan natin sa kanya. So in brief, yun ang tingin ko na dapat tingnan natin na ang gulo sa ecological integrity. Bakit ba ako nakapasok dyan? Una-una siguro, bata pa ako, mahilig na ako sa kalikasan. No? It's innate in me. No? Andito ako ngayon sa Ilocos Norte, kare-retire ko lang, balik kalikasan ako. Ang ilog ay 1 block away from my house with the mountains, rice fields, etc. At doon nagmula ang aking pagmamahal sa kalikasan na na-translate later on into college education dahil ang undergrad ko ay zoology na may kasamang ecology. Pero siguro ang talagang turning point ng aking career ay noong 1986, right after the EDSA Revolution, kami nila Dr. Galang sa Environmental Planning Department ay nag-isip kung paano namin matutulungan ang ating pamahalaan. If you remember at that point in our history, people's participation was very much appreciated, and so ang pinag-usapan namin ay ang aming focus ay ecological or environmental education because we were in the field of education and at the same time we were in the environmental department. So tuloy-tuloy na yon. Alam na natin yun. And the rest is history. Dahil we became players in the forefront of environmental education. We went to the fields, we went to the streets para mag-rally sa maraming mga issues. Namundok kami katulad mo rin, Karlo. At hindi lang kami nag-mountaineering, nagtanim kami at hindi lang kami basta nagtanim. We involved communities in the conservation of our forests. So, ngayon buhay pa, nag-umpisa kami as Miriam Peace, Marino Public Education and Awareness Campaign for the Environment, which is a group of volunteer teachers involved in environmental education. Pero sa ngayon, meron ng Miriam ang Environmental Studies Institute. At in short, buhay pa kami. Which is really, I think, the proof of sustainability. And ano na kami nila Noemi yan, ano na yan, till death do us part, ika nga, best friends forever. Hanggang mamatay kami, ano na yon, yung advokasya namin yan. At advokasya rin namin na yung susunod na generasyon ay ma-educate. Kahapon lang ay nagbigay kami ng workshop sa mga daycare teachers ng Metro Manila. So, ang layunin yan ay para ma-educate ng mga teachers na ito, yung mga bata, yung mga 3 to 5 years old. So, we go as far as that. No? So, mula sa kabataan hanggang sa graduate program, kay si Noemi, ongoing pa rin ang pag-aaral niya. Kahit na nasa master's na siya. Environment pa rin. Okay, so napahaba na yun.
Ayan. Maraming salamat po, Ma'am Donna. Grabe, ang dami po natin na naalaman. Tsaka mamaya may gusto rin ako i-touch doon kasi ang ganda ng mga punto na ni-raise ni Miss Donna. But Miss Noemi, kayo naman din po, how did you get involved with this advocacy, etc.?
Well, connected din doon what Dr. Donna said because around 17 years ago, tagal na, my age is showing, but I'm continuous education, di ba? Lifetime education. After we built here, yung house namin dito, across Moro Lorenzo Gym lang kami. So, nandito lang kami sa paligid ng Ateneo. So, it just so happened that Dr. Galang, as Dr. Donna mentioned, Dr. Angelina Galang, the proponent for environmental education here in the Philippines, no? Na nag-lobby para sa batas ng environmental education. Since she was my neighbor and I was kind of new here in the area in Diliman, I met her and I asked her, how do we segregate waste? I mean, here in our village, we have to segregate. I mean, I want to learn how to segregate. Where will I learn that? And And then she said, go to Miriam. Maybe you can ask around there and look for this person. So that's what happened. I was gullible enough to since, I was like slowing down, and I started to explore studying again. I thought I'd have an early retirement in my life. Parang travel na lang tayo kahit na mura lang. Uso na yung Cebu Pacific at that time. So here I am. Although thereafter, I joined them, the advocates. I've previously done advocacy and lobby work on several environmental issues, including large-scale mining, solid waste management, and my personal favorite, the sustainability of agricultural systems. I mean, I did a lot of legislative hearings, executive hearings. I was sent to represent position papers. But at one point, I transitioned. I trained and worked under the National Organic Agriculture Program of the Department of Agriculture. That's why agriculture is very close to my heart, and you'll probably hear of it from me. And I sat as a member of the National Committee overseeing the competency of organic certifying bodies, which is very environmental for me. Yun na yun.
Grabe, ang ganda. Ang wide ng experiences, and that's nice to know na parang it becomes really a lifetime advocacy, and marami ding mga kaibigan actually kakilala ko din na ganun din yung pagtingin nila sa environment, pagpasok nila sa advocacy, talagang iba yung level of commitment na nangyayari, especially now when young people are confronted with the reality of climate change deadlines, and the pressures that we are facing by 2030, by 2040, mga ganun po, so that's good to hear, maybe I just like to hear your thoughts then on this, I think a part of ecological integrity, I think the bigger aspect of it, and maybe this is connected a bit to Laudato Si, based on your experience, meron very personal encounters with the environment, especially si Dr. Donna, nag-share po siya. Maybe you want to share a bit about that, Dr. Donna, maybe like attitudes, I think it's nice to think about the environment not just as an issue, na kailangan solusyonan or protektahan, but it also has a more personal dimension. Kasi kay Ma'am Noemi nga, naghahanap lang siya kung saan siya pwede di ba? Saan itatapon, ganun, But, there's really a conversion of attitudes. Maybe you just have some thoughts on that first, Dr. Donna.
Yeah, ang talagang goal ng environmental education, sinasabi mo, Karlo, na conversion. It's ecological conversion. Yun ang ating tinitignan na words from Laudato Si, And what we want to happen is that each and every individual person should have an affiliation with nature, should have a love of nature, and it starts as early as possible, as early as we can, Pagmulat ng bata, dapat naumpisan na siyang na-expose sa things natural and things environmental. Yung sinasabi nga namin kahapon sa mga daycare teachers ay turuan yung mga nanay na kumain ng natural. Yan ang pinaka-basic, yun ang una siguro. Hindi pa siya nag-iisip, alam na niya ang lasa ng malunggay, alam na niya ang lasa ng mga vegetables, so that yung affiliation niya sa kalikasan ay nasa loob na ng kanyang katawan. Ika nga, and then afterwards, we always tell them, bring them to places of nature. Dapat ang puno ay hindi dinodrawing. Dapat alam niya kung ano ang feeling, ano ang amoy, anong lasa ng pwedeng kainin. And eventually, as they grow older, medyo gawin ng mas complicated sa beach, sa bundok, sa ilog, etc. for them to experience, to live within nature. Ang kalikasan ay hindi malayo sa iyo. Dapat kasama sa katawan mo, in essence, yung nanggagaling sa kalikasan, at ikaw din ay nararamdaman mo yung pagmamahal mo sa kalikasan dahil andun ka mismo. Sa kalikasan. You are with nature itself because that's the whole idea. Human beings are not apart from nature. Hindi kalikasan, dyan, at ako, eto hindi. Kasama tayo sa kalikasan and we are part of that web of life. We are part of ecology. So yun yung gusto natin ituro and to teach the children as early as possible. Ikaw, I'm sure, Karlo, nag-umpisa kang mag-akyat ng bundok, baka teenager ka na, no? So, pa-complicate ng pa-complicate yan. Kami nila, Noemi, ay medyo naging iba na yung aming ambisyon makakita ng iba't ibang mga ecosystems in the world. So, nag-umpisa na kami mag-travel, tumingin sa mga farms, sa forest protected areas, particularly sa atin. Tapos, ang balik ko lang pala dito rin pala sa bayan namin, sa ilog pa rin namin. So, wherever you are, that's part of being with nature. At saka, ang palagi kong sinasabi, ang first step for the children to become lovers of biological diversity is actually love for pets. Yung mga aso nila, yung mga birds nila, ibon, etc. Pag alam nilang alagaan, pakainin, linisan, patulugin, dun ang umpisa ng pagmamahal sa bigger biodiversity systems like agriculture, forests, water ecosystems, etc. Palawak ng palawak yung kamalayan ng isang bata with exposure to nature. Yan ang aking advocacy, Karlo. Kaya trademark ko yan sa Miriam nung hindi pa COVID pandemic. I bring my students anywhere and everywhere in different ecosystems. Sa watershed, alam ni Noemi yan, nagpupulot kami ng mga bato habang nagpapag-usap sa mga magsasaka, ganon. So, personal and actually, it's social and political and economic. Yun ang napakahalaga. Hindi siya hiwalay ang kalikasan sa usaping pang-ekonomiya at ito yung sinasabi naman ng United Nations sa kanyang framework in sustainable development na kung saan ang Pilipinas ay signatory of course tayo sa United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, Convention on Climate Change. So, yung nalalapit na halalan, hindi malayo sa usapin ng pangkalikasan because if you teach the children how to love nature pero yung politikum mo naman ay hindi mo nakikitang naglalab ng nature, paano naman yan? Paano yung mga leaders mo magkaiba yung inyong pananaw na hindi naman sa kanila mahalaga ang ecological integrity? Walang synchrony, walang harmony ating bayan. Yun lang, of course, yung issues na sinasabi natin ay maraming issues yan. Pwede kang nasa kaliwa, pwede kang nasa kanan. Ang mahalaga is meron kang mga prinsipyo. Kaya ang tinutukan natin, Karlo, ay hindi lang yung perspective sa mga issues, kundi yung 7 environmental principles. Narinig mo na yan dahil magkasama tayo sa mga training.
Thank you. I see. Go.
Ayan, napaka-enriching ng sinabi ni Doc, no? Parang na-complete na yung gusto nating itanong sa susunod eh. Pero may mga few points akong narinig na pili ko gusto ko doon magpatuloy. Kasi nabanggit nga niya yung ecological conversion. Tapos the many aspects na pwedeng tignan kung paano maka-influence, di ba? Bukod sa education formally sa school, pati yung mga formation sa simbahan, sa bahay, di ba? Talagang included. And yung nabanggit ni Miss Noemi kanina is yung particular na aspect na nag-i-influence sila ay yung legislative, di ba? Talagang nag-a-attend ng mga lobbying for policies, very political. Kaya ngayon nabanggit ni Doc kanina about elections, di ba? Kung hindi in sync yung candidates, kung hindi in sync yung policy makers natin, hindi rin magkakaroon ng magandang results, di ba? Yung mga advocacy natin ito. Kasi siguro gusto ko dong i-connect yung ating tanong next eh. Paano ba dapat tignan yung issue ng environment or ecological integrity pagdating sa kampanya, di ba, ng mga politiko? Paano nila dapat i-form yun as part of their platform at paano rin siya dapat pag-usapan naman ng mga botante? either si Miss Noemi dahil nabanggit niya kanina yung mga experience, 'di ba, sa pag-lobby, and then si Doc din.
I'd like to point out kasi na elections, political exercises like the elections, it's not like it's just about the campaign, the politicos. It's basically the ultimate decision makers are the voters, right? So I'd like more to focus on for us. So many of us should be focusing on who are the voters, what are the demographics, what are the current trends, ano ba yung, di ba? Parang history keeps on evolving. It's 1975, 1999 is different from 2022. So like for me, I've been very close to my kids ever since. Now I'm married, I have kids, and they both went to Ateneo. The thing is, parang we have so many. This is the TikTok generation now. We have so many young people, too many young voters. So I think the voters, it's not just looking at what's in the campaign, but also looking at the voters, what are trending in their heads. For me, I kind of like, I like the point where I'm flexible. I think I will have to share my experience with you. That, you know, when I started in this advocacy for the environment, I was getting ribbed all the time. They were like saying, Mom, I'm so ashamed of you being a tree hugger. Are you a tree hugger? You know, it's like, parang natatawa sila sa akin, Mom, why do we have to do that? Parang even my friends, and they were saying, ano ka ba? You're so gastador. And then environmental. Who are you kidding? You know, that is reality, right? I mean, most of us in the country, poor, rich, we always strive to want something. We have needs, we create also wants. So basically, you know, siguro except for those who had mellowed down in their yung older na sila, basically it's human nature that we are consumers, right? We are really passionate consumers. And look at Lazada, look at Shopee, look at even the malls now, they're all over the malls already again. And what I'm saying is we have to balance needs, wants, and also what is appropriate. I realized when, around 17, 15 years ago, you know, there are so many things I don't need. And maybe the political climate should also encourage less waste, you know. So I think voter education, I don't know if I'm moving away from your question already, but I feel like I'd like to see if the politicians who are presenting themselves to us, are they actually encouraging more resource use? Are they encouraging more consumerism that is unreasonable already? Are they encouraging mentalities that are towards ecological sustainability? Well, for me, ecological sustainability, by the way, is really a whole system management because everything is connected to everything else. Whatever we consume, it will be produced, more will be produced. Alam niyo yung spiraling cycle, I mean, I'm sure Ateneo, Miriam, and a lot of top schools, most of the top schools in the Philippines, they will highlight that concept of economics, where there is a spiraling consumerism, production. So we have to have a balance of sustainability, hindi yung bara-bara na lang. I mean, I don't know. So let me go back to what you wanted. Can you regroup me, because I get so passionate when it comes to you know, feeling like a young person, and like sometimes I just recognize it's just sometimes very hard to balance, and that's what life is all about. We have to balance something. Are the politicals encouraging us to do that? Are we actually being encouraged ourselves to do that? So that's basically my comment on that. You know.
Steve, I just want to jump in, no, because I think Ma'am Noemi pointed out something really well, no, beyond just going straight. And later, I think we will be talking about certain policies, no, but I think Ma'am Noemi hit it at a very good principle, no, the principle really of sustainability, right? The idea that it's enough, no. I remember in my class in development studies, we used to talk about this also because most of the time our concept of development or even our concept po ng economics, it's always more. It's more oriented, right? Like we always need more, we need to consume more, we have to gather more, no? But and I remember my professor mentioning there because I think I chanced upon a book pinabasa po kami noon, no. Si Donella Meadows. I think it was an old book and she was predicting climate change as early as 1970s. Parang they made models, no? And they were saying na no, there is an enough. We need to say enough at some point, no? Sa ating lipunan. At maganda pag-isipan 'yon, no? And I just wanted to jump on that because tama nga, no, when we talk about policies, what's the mentality behind, no? Does it encourage us to get more, especially when we look at the environment as if it's alien, di ba, species, no? Something that we can conquer, something that we can take more from, no? That's nice, no, to look at because we may not be conscious about it, but even our consumeristic tendencies actually has that impact. So if you have politicians saying, "De, okay lang sirain yung environment para naman yan sa atin, para mas madami tayong makukuha," di ba? Or we should continue to just keep quarrying that area because that's for us to use at the end of the day, no? You know, that there's that thing that we have to balance. And I just wanted to point out that that's a good principle to work with, no? As we look at policies of politicians in the upcoming elections, ano yung ini-encourage nila na mindset? Is it sustainability? Or is it like to encourage more? Sorry, ano lang ako, it was a big insight, no? Coming from this Noemi sharing. Baka si safe din may maybe si Donna.
Another principle na naisip ko, Karlo, is yung sinabi ni Miss Noemi na balance din eh. Parang hindi rin pwedeng extremes na parang if hindi innately sustainable yung isang bagay, parang ka-cancel out na agad, di ba? Or parang yung isang business, sabihin na nating business, kung gina-judge na siya as parang hindi to magiging sustainable para sa environment, automatic, hindi na pwede. But then, we need to look at the, parang ano yung effect nun sa livelihood naman ng tao. Paano yung mga tao na umaasa dun sa particular industry? Paano dapat siya i-regulate, di ba? Hindi naman automatically na need i-cancel. And I think maraming ganitong klaseng industry, pero hahayaan na lang natin yung ating mga guests na i-explore mamaya. Kasi kagaya ng issue ng mining, malaking usapan yung mining, di ba? Do we totally cancel mining? Or are there sustainable ways, di ba? Na masasabi nating possible naman ituloy yung mining, di ba? Kasi thinking din na yung ibang tao umaasa sa ganong industry. At hindi naman natin masabi na dahil lang for many mali yung mining per se, di ba? Sabihin na natin wag silang ma-involve doon. Paano kung yun lang yung available na mapagkukunan nila ng hanap buhay sa particular lugar, di ba? So yun, si Doc ba may iba pang insights how candidates should look at or talk about issues sa environment?
Yes, Xavier, bigla akong napaupo bigla kasi napag-uusapan yung mining. Na siguro bago ko sagutin yung talagang question mo, gusto kong balikan yung mining. I'm sure naalala ni Noemi the times when our mantra in the environmental movement was no mining. Maalala mo, ban on mining. Maalala mo, Noemi, yan ang mga sinasabi natin nung araw. But it's a reality that in the Philippines, we are rich in two areas. One is biological diversity, kagubatan, tubig, etc. And pangalawa is we are rich in mineral resources. In other words, napakayaman natin sa mga pwedeng minahin. And the Department of Environment and Natural Resources has an environmental management bureau. It is also a mining bureau. So yung dalawang yan ay tinatalakay na sa DNR. Ang masasabi ko lang is apparently we cannot stop mining in the Philippines. But that there are sustainable ways of mining. Hindi lahat ng, may project sa Minan, approve mo yan. Merong mga no. Pwede mong sabihin na no to mining. Saan? Halimbawa, doon sa mga protected areas, that is indicated in our law, in our National Integrated Protected Area System. Hindi pwedeng magmina sa ating mga national parks, sa mga sanctuaries, sa mga lugar na na-designate na conservation areas, especially biodiversity conservation. At kung magmimina man tayo at na-approve siya, hindi ibig sabihin magmina ka hanggang gusto mo, as if walang hangganan. No, because there could be negative impacts of mining that are even more devastating and more in terms of monetary loss than what you will gain from taxation and what you will gain from income. Let me say, for example, pag isang lugar ay nabaha dahil bumagsak lahat ang mga siltation, bumagsak yung mga silt at siya'y nabaha at maraming namatay, maka-quantify mo ba yan? Halimbawa rin, yung mga trees in the forest. Ano ba ang value niya in terms of biodiversity? Ano ang value ng timber? So in other words, baka yung value ng timber ay napakaliit compared to the value of biodiversity in being able to absorb carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, in being able to protect us from big typhoons like for example sa Sierra Madre. Kung minsan mali yung pagbavalue natin, itong mga integrity of creation versus the economic values, hindi ito balanse. So, dapat yun ang mga tinitignan natin. At hindi lang yan. Yung economic value niya is hindi yung ano ang nakukuha nating pera sa taxation, kundi sino ba ang yumayaman sa mining operations na yan. Ano ba ang access ng mga mahihirap? Kasi normally, yung mga mahihirap taga-dig lang yan ng mga mineral, no? Pero sino ang kumikita? At sinong bayan ang kumikita? Pilipinas ba o yung ibang bayan na investors na nagbigay ng pera sa atin, no? Kasi ang daming mga issues yan. Alam naman niyo kung minsan aalis na yung nag-invest. Kaninong naiiwan nung nasira niya? Sa atin din yon. So maraming anggulo yan. So we're not saying that no exactly to mining, even quarrying is a form of mining kasi gumagawa tayo ng bahay natin. Gaya ng sinabi mo, Karlo, yung pagbahay, pag sinabi mong progressive ka at mayaman ka, maliit ba bahay mo? Hindi. Tanungin natin sa mga Atenista. Hey guys, what's the area of your living space? No? Saan nanggaling yung mga yan? Sa quarry na gravel and sand, sa cement na quarry. In other words, everything that we use to build our big houses and then bigger houses and should go richer, bigger and bigger and bigger houses. No? Dumadaming mga tao. So in other words, bagamat hindi natin masabi na hindi na tayo magmimina, there are more sustainable ways of looking at it. No? At using example na yan, gusto kong balikan yung unang tanong talaga. How should we look at it? How should we gauge whether something is environmental or not? Whether in these elections or even afterwards. No? Gusto kong magbigay ng tatlong perspektibo ng pagtingin kung paano nating titignan ng isang bagay, isang activity of government, isang tao ay environmental. Siguro unahin ko yung palagi namin tinuturo sa CEAP Academy, Karlo, kung matandaan mo, the 7 environmental principles. No? Tutulungan ako ni Noemi ito. Principle, ikaw, Karlo, kung matandaan mo. Principle number 1, nature knows best. Ang kalikasan ang mas nakakaanam. Eto ba? Kinakain ko ay natural ba yan o chichira lang yan? Galing ba yan sa soya beans na gawa sa GMO? Paano mo ba titignan anong pinapakain mo? Pangalawa is all forms of life are important. Lahat ng uri na may buhay ay mahalaga. no? And this is biological diversity, no? And that's why we love Saint Francis of Assisi dahil siya nagsabi, brother sun, sister moon, ang mga ibon ay mga kapatid. Siya nagsabi nun. That's from our Christian teachings. Number 3, sinabi ni Noemi kanina, everything is related to everything else. Ang ginawa mo, lalong-lalo na yung, kunyari nagtapon ka ng basura na hindi ka nag-segregate at naglanding sila lahat sa creek, lalong-lalo tabi ng creek. We are bounded by a creek. Ang Miriam at Xavier, may creek yan, no? Siya ba'y madumi? Medyo. Silip kayo, Karlo. Pag nag-face-to-face tayo, ano bang meron yan? Madumi yan. So, saan nanggaling yung mga yan? So, you know, everything is related to everything else. Pangatlo is everything changes. Ang kalikasan ng nagbabago, pero hindi yung mabilis na pagbabago. Yung climate change, as we know it today, no, ay mabilis na pagbabago na baka hindi na tayo maka-adjust at baka tao pa ang unang extinct, no? Yung number 5 is everything goes somewhere. Lahat ng bagay na tinapon mo may patutunguhan yan. Yung mga microplastics po pwedeng pumunta sa karagatan, no? Laking issue na ngayon, no? At saka yung number 5, yung sinabi rin ninyo kanina, ours is a finite earth. Hindi lahat ng bagay ay andyan. Akala mo yung namimina mo, andyan palagi yan. No. They will be gone sometime because they are non-renewable resources. Kaya nag-shift din tayo sa renewable resources. Yung number 7 is nature is beautiful and we are stewards of God's creation. Klaro naman yun. Maganda ang kalikasan at tayo ay lingkod ng Diyos. Yun isang sense. 7 lenses which we teach our children and it's part of the educational system of CEAP at meron pa kaming aklat na ginawa niyan, pinapalawig namin yan, paano ituturo yung 7 environmental principles. Yung susunod siguro, hindi ko explain lahat kasi 17 lahat yan. Yung Sustainable Development Goals, marami yan. Babasahin na lang po ninyo. Ang gusto ko lang sabihin is meron pang hunger doon. No, kailangan tignan mo yung mga taong marginalized, yung mga tao sa laylayan. Napakaganda. We are part of that Sustainable Development Goals. Meron tayong national commitments to pursue them. So, titignan mo yung 7 environmental principles. Ano mang sinasabi nitong politikong to? No? How do poor access the resources? Ano yung solid waste management problem nila? How do they stop pollution? How do they ensure that we have food for the Filipino people? No, yung pagkain, sinasabi ni Noemi kanina, napakalaga yan. Means kung ang sustainability ay, ang definition mo ay mag-i-import ka ng bigas at manok at baboy sa ibang bansa, yan ba ay tunay na sustainability? Or are we looking at our local production and do we have people who will patronize things that are local? Napakalaga yan. Gusto kong i-mention yan kasi alam mo, kami nasa Ilocos, mahilig kaming magsalita tungkol sa food sustainability. Pag titignan mo yung favorite food namin na pakdet, yung mga ingredients ng pakdet, gawa sa Ilocos yan. Hindi ka nalalabas para bumili. Hindi galing sa China, sa Amerika, yung galing sa Ilocos Norte, yung mga maliliit na ampalaya, maliliit na talong, ewan ko natikman na niya. Yung bagoong galing sa isda namin, yung everything in it, kamatis, gawa namin lahat yan. That we believe is part of sustainability. So dapat titignan mo rin, eto bang politiko, ano bang konsepto niya? Eto ba yung mapagmahal sa kanyang bayan? Kasi patriotism, we believe, is part of the environmental ethic. Yan ang aming paniniwala rin. No? So, yun. At saka yung pangatlo na source of, is it environmental or not? Siyempre yung favorite natin na Laudato Si. Mahaba yan, more than 100 pages yan, kaya hindi ko rin nakakain yan. So please read. Those are the 3 things that I would say are very important sources of whether we are following ecological integrity or not. Yan, mahaba na yan. Galing sa teacher na yan.
Oo nga eh, parang sabi ko nga doon, Checha ko si parang nagkaroon tayo ng crash course sa environmental
Ang
education.
lalim kasi yung tanong ninyo eh. Di ba? Ang hirap sagutin kasi noon, alam mo, 3 araw ko pinag-uusapan, paano ko sasabihin yung hindi naman lahat palagi black and white. No?
Yes.
Minsan may gray zones. No? At saka alam mo, habang madaming mga nagsisira sa kalikasan, more and more human beings all over the world are looking at ecological technologies. Pabago ng pabago yan. Ngayon, ang dami-dami ng solar panels, di ba? Madami ng bisikleta, no, kung di ba electrical, yung manual na lang. So, more and more, it's not, even aircon, may mga inverter na. So, hindi naman totally against our comfort, but we should always explore ecological technologies and choose that ecological technology.
Thank you, Dr. Donna. Well, at this point, actually, I'd just like to greet some of those who are listening on the CEAP page. No? So, good morning po sa mga nakikinig po sa ating programa ngayon, kila Miss Ana Marie Joy Alcance, kay Miss Mirna Abiol, kay Miss Ellen Vidal de Losa, kay Miss Maria Luis Onday. They're watching from sa Notre Dame of Midsayap. So, galing Mindanao pa po. No? Meron din po nakikinig galing sa Iloilo City. Si Miss Rose Cortez naman po, watching from St. Francis Xavier Academy of Kapatagan, no? Lanao del Norte. Grabe, ang dami natin mga Mindanao listeners po, no?
Good morning.
Good morning kay Sinto Sherlita din, watching from Lanao del Norte. Kay Brother Edgar Constantino Matyong, greetings from the Congregation of Brothers of Christian Instruction. Pandan Antique. Ayan. And galing din po kay Miss Imelda Madamba. Oy, galing sa St. Nicholas Academy of Bintar, Ilocos Norte. Kababayan niyo po.
Kababayan dyan lang, a few blocks away.
Ayan, few blocks away. Baka at this point actually, we'd also like to ask our audience, mga nakikinig po dyan, maybe you'd like to answer the question, no? Ano ba yung issue, no? Para sa inyo, ano yung pinaka matingkad na environmental issue sa locality ninyo? I-type nyo lang po, no? At sana mapapag-usapan din natin sa ating usapan sa episode na to, no? But I think going straight from that, si Save may tanong ata din para kay Miss Noemi naman po.
I-connect lang natin, Miss Noemi and Doc Donna, yung next question ni natin na na-prepare. So, parang recently, marami ding mga specific issues na lumalabas na connected sa environment. And gusto namin malaman like parang quick thoughts on them. Siguro yung dalawang clear for us ay yung ano yung thoughts nyo on, ito nabanggit nyo na kanina yung sa mining so hindi na natin muna daanan, is yung issue ng Parex. And siguro hindi lang yung Parex, yung Pasig River Expressway na ginagawa, but kung ano man yung iba pang development projects na katulad ng Parex na mainit din yung issue na yun, yung usapin na yun. And pangalawa is yung marami sa atin ngayon, di ba? Parang hindi nagaanong na pinag-uusapan yung disaster management. Pero hindi naman talaga nabawasan yung disaster. Tapos at the same time, feeling ko hindi rin naman din sobrang nag-improve yung the way na hinahandle yung disaster sa Pilipinas. Hindi ko naman sinasabing walang improvement at all. But parang curious lang din ako, hindi na gaanong napag-uusapan, 'di ba, after ng years talking about Yolanda, 'di ba? So ano yung thoughts niyo po on those two things, Parex and yung mga other development projects and disaster management?
Ikaw muna, Noemi.
Okay, Doc, ano lang, sa akin short lang kasi actually, if you will notice, Dr. Donna is really a staunch and passionate frontliner in the environmental advocacy, right? Talagang environmental warrior, kakahawa talaga yan. So, but I'm like many environmental advocates also, or at least students. Kasi right now my hat is really a student, and I'm still continuously learning. It never stops, things happen, things get built, things different policy, different presidents, different barangay captains for that matter. So, the only difference with people like us in our circle is that we do more research. We just also do a little more vocalization when we see something interesting or we see something that is so like, oh, really? It's really like this? How come we didn't know that? Maybe we should tell everybody, So I think as to your, to relate it to your question, I'd like to still come from the example of mining, because it's similar to all the other issues. I think we should look more into the systemic structure of the bureaucracy, because I think a lot of the problems or potential problems in everything that's happening in our country right now can be traced to, it's a systemic problem. It's really the structure. For example, yung mining na nga, which will also cascade to things like public works, ganyan. It's because the agency itself, if anybody has not yet noticed, that the structure of the bureaucracy itself is schizophrenic. One department is actually the regulator and also the proponent. It supports, pushes, right? Like we have to have more mining. We have to reach a certain contribution to GDP. We have to have this much income from it, etc., etc. So, and the other part is regulating. So I think in the next administration, if not the legislators also, should work closely together to really look into our government structure. We at least yun man lang, we have to separate it, because there are two important things that we need to have in good governance. One is that there is a check and balance, right? It's the hallmark of democracy. There has to be check and balance. So one is promoting or executing the policy, and there's also a portion where somebody is looking into, monitoring, checking. I mean, you cannot be the judge and the, di ba parang sinasabi nga nila, di ba? Hindi ka naman pwede yung ikaw na yung lahat. So, para kang Diyos. And some people will really take advantage of being ikaw na yung Diyos. Well, that's not how it is. We're espousing a real, parang the ideology of democracy is not like that. It's really a systems check and balance. And another one I'd like to point out, at top of mind, is yung administration of the country. The top people should be able to see a macro view. They're the visionaries. They're the like overseeing the forest. I mean, you can go deep down to excuse me for saying this, to actually nakikialam ka pa sa pag-procure ng ilang mask, di ba? Ilang syringe ba yan? No, it is a macro view. And then you make sure each and every component of your system is monitored, evaluated, re-evaluated, revised. Kumbaga, we know the system already. Our schools are teaching us that all the time. Then how come our very systemic, our problems are still systemic? Yung pinaka-system natin, kumbaga para kang may eskwela din, na yung mismong policy niya flawed. I mean, how can you really expect it to have a good result or happy kayong lahat, Somewhere along the line, we will have a big problem, especially if there is no check and balance and the highest level doesn't have a macro view. Very, very, what do you call it? Pipeline, view, di ba? Pipe vision, hindi pwede yun. So I think the candidates, should take a second look at our national, regional, and local policies para mag-cascade yung vision. And of course, the more difficult part is continuity. We know that whoever will sit will have a short time to implement everything. So I think having a continuity, a feeling of continuity sa umpisa pa lang. When it comes to June next year, we should already start seeing the leaders actually explaining to us what we're going to do. I mean, I feel bad for NEDA because NEDA, I don't know if sa dinami-dami ng intelligent people in NEDA and all the beautiful documents that they've come up with, recommendations, we're hardly following NEDA, really. I mean, the vision, ano ba yung ating program ngayon? Vision for 2040?
40.
Di ba we have that? I forgot what the number is.
Ambition 2040.
Yes, Ambition 2040, right? So, I mean, the continuity is beautiful. The document is beautiful. I mean, our next leaders should be able to feel it. What is it all about? We have NEDA. We have all these geniuses giving you already your kodigo. May kodigo ka na nga, hindi pa ginagamit, babagsak ka pa. That's really sad, isn't it? So basically, that's my stand on these things. Because if we look at the Parex, if we look at it's really, the other issues is really the check and balance. Who's looking?
Yeah.
Who is mandated to actually check it? And who can see the vision that it's aligned until 2040? Kahit na 2040 na lang. And who is implementing it there that they can actually do something about if there's something wrong down there. For example, pagdating doon sa barangay, yung sinira na yung easement ng creeks doon sa barangay because of the project, like the river system, we're doing that now, yung Parex, di ba? I mean, each and every square meter of the metropolis is governed by a certain barangay, barangay bureaucracy. So if the vision of the national is cascaded down to the smallest unit, then idealistic, but I think doable, right? Doable and I think fantastic.
Thank you, Miss Noemi. Very loaded yun. Pero bago tayo mag-proceed, baka may other comments si Doc Donna?
Yeah, gusto ko lang dugtungan yung patungkol sa Parex dahil nakwento ko na yung aking paniniwala sa mining, no? It's so hard to judge it in a way because talaga namang traffic, no? Pero ngayon na pandemic, alam natin na marami namang solusyon sa transportation na hindi lang paggagawa ng kalye, no? So the Parex again prepares us to own vehicles, not just have vehicles, but encourages people to own vehicles, which is not entirely the solution to the transportation problem, no? So, ang mangyayari niyan, yun, para yan sa mga may kaya. Saan ngayon dadaan yung meron ba yung Parex men, meron ba yung daanan ng mga tao? Wala yata eh, pang ano lang yan. So, paano yung mga tao ngayon na walang sasakyan? Dapat yun ang pinagtutuunan natin ng pansin. So, how do we move people around without necessarily buying our own vehicles? So, dapat ang pinagtutuunan is public transportation. Very good public transportation, katulad ng Singapore, if I may say. They focus on tram, trains, etc., which are very convenient so that you don't really have to own a vehicle to go around. Pangalawa, of course, is ano yung impact sa ecosystem. It will cause, of course, more pollution in the environment, more gasoline to be used, at hindi lang yan, anong epekto nito sa ilog. If you recall, saan ilalagay yung mga poste? Kakain ba yung area ng poste sa ilog mismo para maging mas makitid na ngayon ang Pasig River? Baka sabihin nila, hindi, mag-dredge na lang tayo. Not necessarily so, no? Because it might eat up the river banks when in fact, the river bank should be used as parks, no? It should be used for, like for example, yung Arroceros Forest Park, dapat ganun yung mga gamit niya, no? So, alam mo kasi na-enganyo tayo sa mga picture ng mga highways abroad eh. Yan ang dapat solusyon, ganon. Pero then again, that's part of the culture of consumerism in a way, no? Na the more the merrier, everything is more the merrier. So, napakahirap na ano yan kasi in the same manner, tayo naman lahat ay kailangang gumalaw. Pero, there could be ways of urban planning. Issue kasi yan ng urban planning din. Where people do not have to be transported all the time. Ako ngayon, hindi na masyadong lumalabas. I don't know, I have to confess also na kung nag-shop rin ako, naglalasada rin ako kasi hindi na ako ilalabas. No, pero there are ways now of shopping, there are ways of purchasing, there are ways of producing food that are more localized rather than moving around town in vehicles. Ang tingin ko ay dapat pag-isipan natin, mahalaga yung may mga highways like ngayon, going to Ilocos, mga 8 oras na lang, araw 10 oras. No? Kuminsan 7 oras. Why? Because of the highways that were built. But at the same time, there are highways that cut into forests. Like ito yung sa gitna ng Sierra Madre, na hinati yung Sierra Madre National Park at may highway sa gitna. Anong implication yan to building settlements and lessening the forest cover? Maraming mga issues yan. So, needless to say, hindi ako gang-ho sa pares. I cannot say I'm totally against it. Pero ang tanong ko lang, wala na bang ibang paraan? Yun na lang ba talaga yun? Yun ang aking tanong. Which says much but doesn't say much.
Again, loaded din yung sinabi ni Doc Donna. I think, pero yung similar talaga sa sinabi ni Doc Donna and ni Miss Noemi is yung going back to the principles, di ba? Na yung binanggit kanina about ecological integrity. Tapos nagkakascade talaga into the details. Yung mga principles na yon hanggang sa maski kung paano ba i-formulate itong development ng Parex, kailangan pumasok doon yung mga prinsipyo. Kung Parex ba din talaga yung proper solution or hindi, di ba? Doon na-figure out. And I think tama si Miss Noemi, nagka-cut across siya all projects Talagang even if iba yung nature ng particular project, naalala ko nga yung Dolomite Beach ulit Parang babalik ulit dun sa principles na kung tama ba yung natutulungan nito, 'di ba? Tama din ba yung structures ng mga to? Siguro idudugtong ko na rin dun sa ating isa sa pinaka-important na question is yung about sa elections kasi although hindi pa start ng campaign period, marami na rin namang politikong naglalabas ng points of view even sa local ako hindi ako aware sa mga local candidates na platform pa sa ngayon. But gusto namin, curious kami kung may mga nabasa na ba kayo or napakinggan na plataforma na sa tingin yung promising in terms of the environmental advocacy. Hindi naman kailangang may particular candidate na or kung national lang ba or local. But siguro yung gusto naming malaman is meron na bang nag-raise ng mga gantong issues? At may mga proposals bang sa tingin nyo pong maganda? Kumbaga, para sa ating future sa Pilipinas.
Yeah. Parang I guess just to add, no? Parang, kung meron na tayong narinig on that and even things like climate change, coal, energy transitions, environmental protection, we're famous for getting human rights environmental defenders killed. Mga ganun po, no? I'm just not sure if we've been able to hear, no, of such topics in the election.
I'm sure na ang ating mga kandidato naghahanda na ngayon ng environmental platform kasi maraming hihingi. The people in the environmental movement, for instance, are waiting for the environmental platform of the candidates. So maybe not just the candidates but more so the winners. In short, wala silang lusot. Kasi unang-una, tayo ay pirmado sa United Nations. For example, Convention on Biological Diversity, marami pang mga Convention on Climate Change, I think meron naman nag-attend ng COP 26 sa Glasgow. So alam natin, pirmado tayo lahat dyan, Paris Agreement, etc. So we know that we are part of it. And whoever wins ay mag-abang na po kayo dahil manghihingi po kami ng environmental platform. Pero hindi lang siguro yung environmental platform ang kailangan nating abangan at tignan. One is that they are going to present an environmental platform. Alam ko po kung pwede kong sabihin, naghahanda na si Presidential Lenny, si Bongbong Marcos, ay hindi ko pa nakikita, but siya kasi meron na siyang mga previous environmental projects. So if you recall, yung kanyang windmills sa Ilocos, halimbawa, sa kanya nag-umpisa yan. So there are bills which he co-signed when he was a member of the Senate. Hindi ko na sasabihin lahat kung ano yung mga yon. Maybe i-research na natin lahat. Si President Paul Isko, alam natin, meron din siyang environmental project sa Manila. I know that I'm sure that he was part of the Arroceros, the saving of the Arroceros Forest Park. So, meron na siyang mga naiisip at hindi ko alam yung mga iba. Hindi ko pa naririnig yung mga iba. But what I'm saying is that it could be in their platform or you could look at their track record. Ano na bang nagawa nila? Parang yung taong nanliligaw din yan, Karlo. Hindi lang yung nagpro-profession ng pag-ibig niya, kundi meron na ba siyang nagawa na para malaman mong siya ay tunay na nagmamahal sa kalikasan. So, and as I've said, hindi lang yung ecological integrity per se, but commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals. No? Anong tawag nito? Solution to hunger, solution to inequality, yung mga questions na yun. Solutions to degradation of the land, of solid waste, of waterways, etc. And of course, yung solution sa climate change. No? Na meron ba silang balak na mag-phase out o bawas-bawasan ang coal energy in the Philippines and transition to renewable energy more and more? As people in the energy sector will say, mahirap ang mag-totally transform. But how fast do you want the transition is? Kasi madaming mga issue like yung mga fossil fuels, hindi naman atin yan. Hindi sa Pilipinas yan. Pero yung renewable energy, because we are a tropical country, we can have hydro, we can have solar, we can have, other forms of renewable energy in the Philippines, which will come from our own indigenous resources. Yun lang yung aking mga perspective dyan. In short, abangan. At kung nakaupo na siya, mas lalo pang igigiit what is your environmental agenda.
Si Ms. Noemi po.
Ako naman, I will not necessarily look at their environmental platforms. If we will remember the current administration, when it started, the environmental platform was absent, and then it was added later on when it was revised by NEDA in collaboration with NEDA in the first few months. So I would rather look at their agricultural policy. Because agricultural policy and ecological integrity, they're closely related. In the first place, agriculture is always present in the policies, right? When they present platforms. So it can be a gauge of how they will govern us in the next 6 years. Agriculture, after all, is a driver of real progress and national prosperity. I'd like to look closely to determine the candidates' concrete and actionable goal towards food sufficiency and sustainability. I hate to see motherhood statements that do not clearly assure the country of a truly progressive trajectory to finally become an agricultural powerhouse. or at least for us to move further and much farther away from being the biggest importer of produce and food processing raw materials in the region. So if I see that it is sustainable, it is doable, measurable, and reasonable, and will eventually cascade down to prosperity for driver of prosperity. And as we know, countries, even Singapore, they're gearing up for agricultural prosperity, pati nga sides ng buildings nila, because tinataniman na, because food sufficiency, agricultural policy is closely related to national development and good governance. So that's what I look at. So far, meron, but it's not as concrete and actionable as I'd like them to be. So wait and see. Matagal pa naman eh. I'll check it out.
Save.
Okay na. I mean, ang ganda ng mga sinabi nila. Ang dami ko ring parang nakuhang bagong information. Definitely, I'll consider those points then when I'm looking at the candidates. Kasi even ako, like baka kami rin ni Karlo, nagtatry kami mag-track ng mga platform eh. Pero sa ngayon, hindi pa nga rin po malinaw talaga.
Yeah, and it's relatively absent, no? Parang, I guess kulang pa yung usapan about it. Alam naman natin yung lumulutang ng mga issues din sa media, no? And I think parang importante din yung pag-isipan kasi even for environmental groups, ano din yung gagawin ng mga iba-ibang advocates for agri, for envi, to push this, no, into the landscape of national media. Kasi nga, kulang yung usapan about it, no? Hindi talaga siya and I think that's part of the reason bakit din natin pinapag-usapan to sa Kuwentuhang Halalan. But well, at this point we're running out of time actually. sobrang dami na namin talagang natutunan po, no, sa inyo. But maybe we'd like to ask for some of your closing words, I guess, maybe an invitation, no, to the audience, to our CEAP audience as we move forward, no, in the elections and how we need to be talking about environmental issues. Yeah. Ma'am Noemi and then maybe Dr. Donna. Yeah.
Right. I would like to say that we Filipinos basically, and in fact, cannot just be fence sitters. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. We cannot just be going with the flow of how the world goes by. We must really be proactive because we can be masters of our own destiny. So, because our goal is to be able to do a balancing act in almost everything. There is no integrity if something is too much, something is too strong, something is too weak, something is not there. And politics, our lives, anything is really a balancing act. So when we look at any of the people running and proposing what they can do for us, we have to really look at it and be proactive in actually demanding that we be masters of our own destiny. That will be good for everyone, not just for a very few.
Thank you. Dr. Donna, kayo po.
Okay, ang masasabi ko lang is that this coming elections is very critical. Para sa mga senior citizen na katulad ko, this could be our last president. I mean, sa mga nakakatanda, 6 na taon yan, mga kaibigan, anong itsura ng Pilipinas pagkatapos ng 6 na taon? So, we should really choose our government officials well. Tignan natin, ano kaya ang indication na sila environmental. Katulad ni Noemi, pwede pang magbago yan. Meron akong tinanong na presidential many years ago, sir, anong comment niyo sa ban on logging? Tapos sinignan niya ako, siguro kita niya, environmental to. So, sabi niya sa akin, ban! Sabi niya, ban! Forest, logging. Nung nanalo siya, hindi naman siya nag-ban. So, in other words, the environmental agenda is a promise, is only a promise. But we put someone there na makatao, makabayan, makadiyos, and ensure that kung sino man ang uupo dyan, make him environmental by creating some form of pressure on him. If there's a citizency that's environmental, hindi pwede na yung leader mo hindi rin magiging environmental. The power of the elections is in the people. It's in us. So we don't choose only who could be the most environmental, but we also choose the values that he has based on his track record and also what he says to ensure that he will take care of God's creation. Kung siya ay tunay na maka-Diyos, titingnan niya yon, di ba? Na kasi nasa Biblia yan eh. Di ba? Nasa teachings of the church. And I'm not saying it's only the Catholic Church. It's also the Buddhist religion. It's also the Muslim or religions of the world. Advocate for ecological integrity. At yung Laudato Si ni Pope ay hindi lamang para sa mga Katoliko. It's for the whole of humankind. So we should be aware that the power of the election is in our hands. And so may encourage people to vote wisely. Palaging sinasabi yan, vote wisely, etc. Hindi ko alam na ano bang meron sa ating Pilipino at tumatama ba yung ating pagboboto? Hindi ko na alam. Nahihilo na ako. Hindi ko na alam. But we should not stop because we belong to a democratic country and we are predominantly a Christian country. By following the integrity of creation, we follow the ethics of our own religion. So yung pagboto natin ng tama ay hindi dahil tayo ay makabayan, kundi tayo rin ay makachos. Yun lang.
Thank you to the audience listening. Palakpakan naman po natin at two amazing guests, no? Grabe, sabi nga namin yung crash course and really a lot of things to think about even for me, no? I really learned a lot during this whole session. And Ma'am Donna, kami po, nag-move away na kami from vote wisely. Nasa vote love na kami. Yun na pala yung campaign.
Like that.
Ay, mas gusto ko yan. Sorry. Dapat pala yun pala, vote love. Pero ang palaging sinasabi, ang palagi namin sinasabi, ending slide ko is, it's all about love.
Ayan, tama. It's all about love.
It's all about love. Pagmamahal mo sa sarili mo, sa pamilya mo, sa kapwa mo, sa bayan mo, sa buong mundo, at sa Diyos.
And I think one word that we forgot to even, we did not hear yet is inclusivity. I mean, that's part of the love thing, right? I mean, we cannot keep on dividing ourselves, excluding people here and there.
Right.
You know, we really have to rally as a people. It's really the concept of inclusivity because we're all one and the same in this thing, you know? Lahat tayo, iisa lang ang aspiration natin. Some really more greedy about it, but basically, we really like the same thing. We all want to do it together.
And I think that ties in, no? I guess a synthesis point to the environmental principles that we go back to in the sense that because we are connected, no? And I would go so far as in the principle of Laudato Si that we are responsible for each other. Because of that also, as we begin to elect our leaders, maganda balikan din, no? First synthesis point natin are the principles, no? There are principles we can use to gauge our own. It can be used for us and our own personal lives, but pwede din natin siyang gamitin as standards, no? To actually check on our leaders, yung disposition ba nila, yung attitudes ba nila when it comes to environment, when they talk about environmental protection, when they talk about food and how to produce food, how do they talk about it? How do they see it? No? Because I think that we can, to a certain extent, we can figure out kung yung principles po nila aligned doon sa mga binanggit po nila, Dr. Donna. The second thing, I guess, is connected to the principles is really taking positions, no? At some point, hindi po tayo pwede maging fence-sitters. Tama po yung sinasabi ni Ms. Noemi, no? Na we can't be neutral. I think klaro din po yun sa CEAP that there are things that we need to take stances on. If it violates certain principles, if it violates, no, principles we hold on to as Catholics, no, at some point we have to say no. That is not good for us, right? That's not for the common good. That does not protect human dignity nor human life, and we have to reject these things, no? At some point we have to draw lines, no? Even as we try to weigh in the evidence, no? So, but I think that's important because at some point, we need to find leaders who will have a vision, who will commit to these visions, right? And at some point, we'll make sure that structures in government, sabi nga ni Ms. Noemi, kailangan ayusin yun, di ba? The way that we implement all these policies, we need to have leaders at the local and national level who will also keep in mind these things. No? And maybe the last point, I love the conclusion about proactive. No? Ganda lang pagkasabi ni Ma'am Donna doon, make them environmental. No? At some point, it might be us who have to be pushing these changes and to pressure even our politicians. At minsan sinasabi nga namin ni Say, pinapag-usapan namin, kung wala nang mga maaayos na leaders, we should be training new leaders who will rise up to be politicians who are also for the environment. No? But the necessity, no, to keep in mind, no, this issue for the coming elections, ecological integrity, no, importante po talaga siya. No? And I hope those who've been listening, no, were gained a lot, no? Just like how Save and I also gained a lot. So, Save, baka may mga last points ka. Dami ko na din sinabi.
Siguro magtatapos na tayo. Maraming salamat dun sa ating mga guests. And I think it's not the last naman at marami pa tayong opportunity to talk about the many issues that we talked about this morning. And maraming salamat din sa ating mga listeners. I'm sure marami din silang na-absorb na bagong information na magagamit nila sa uusap, pakipagkwentuhan tungkol sa halalan at sa kalikasan. So yun lang, maraming salamat. Ako po si Xavier ng SLB.
And ako naman po si Karlo from CEAP. Maraming salamat po sa ating...
Ang mensahe po natin dito sa Kuwentuhang Halalan, dito sa Kuwentuhang Bayan, vote love. Piliin po natin ang pag-ibig. Hindi lang po sa halalan, kundi para po sa ating kinabukasan. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vote love.
Yan, vote love.
Palalimin ang kamalayan sa mga isyong napapanahon. Makisangkot at makiisa kasama ang Simbahang Lingkod ng Bayan, ang social-political apostolate ng Kapisanan ni Jesus. Ito ang Kuwentuhang Bayan mula alas 11 ng umaga tuwing Biyernes dito lang sa radyo-katipunan 87.9 FM. Dahil naniniwala kami na posible ang isang mas mabuting lipunan at maaari itong simulan sa isang kwentuhan.